Alright, so today I'm going to talk to you about how to layer your foreground, middle ground, and background piece. So we're going to start out by completing the piece. The instructions for that are separate, but now I'm going to measure it. And I want to cut out a piece of cardboard that's the same size. I'm going to have 3 pieces of cardboard. One's going to back the entire piece, one's going to back the middle ground, and one's going to back the foreground. So here I've cut my piece to match the same size. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to measure how high my middle ground goes. And I'm going to cut another piece of cardboard that's the same width as this one and goes up high enough to include all of my middle ground. I'll grab my ruler, line it up, see how high it goes, and then cut a piece of cardboard to at least that height. I want to go a little over so I have some excess. And I've cut this one already so you can see that lines up and it'll fit the middle ground on there. So last, I'm going to do the same thing. I need it to be high enough for the foreground. So I'm going to measure the highest part of the foreground, and I'm going to cut the cardboard to that size. So I should have 3 pieces of cardboard now of different sizes. One the size of the entire piece, one as tall as the middle ground area, and one as high as the foreground area. All right, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut my piece apart and cut the cardboard pieces to match each piece of my piece. I'm actually going to label these pieces here, just so I don't confuse them later and I know which one I'm using at any given time. Alright, so now I'm going to cut out my separate layers, so I'm going to speed this section up a little bit. Alright, so I am tracing the border between my middle ground and background, and I'm going to cut the middle ground and background apart. I'm using scissors for this. Scissors will work. You can also use an X-Acto knife. Alright, at this point I'm going to take some cardboard, my middle ground piece. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to lay my middle ground paper on top and then trace it and cut it out. And then I'll go ahead and repeat the same steps for my foreground. I'll start by cutting it out, and then I'll put it on top of the foreground cardboard, trace it, and cut the cardboard out. And the shapes should match, cardboard and paper should match each other. It's okay for the cardboard to be a little bit under the paper so that it doesn't stick out and you can't see it. But the further away from the edge of the paper it gets, the more fragile it's going to make the piece and the more likely it is for the paper to snag and rip on something. So I'm going to speed up that next set of steps because they're similar to what I'm doing right now. And then I'll explain what I'm doing when I get to the gluing part. So at this point, I'm going to start gluing the paper and cardboard layers down. So I'm going to start by covering my backing piece with a lot of glue. I want to get plenty of glue on there to get a good bond between the paper and the cardboard. I don't want it to be leaking out and dripping and making a mess all over the place, but I do want a pretty good layer. It helps if you spread it out with your fingers. If you keep a wet paper towel around, you can wipe them off pretty easily while you're working. That's kind of just an easy way to spread the glue out evenly, and it's just Elmer's glue. It's not going to hurt you. So after I get that covered in glue, I'm going to put down my middle ground cardboard, and then I'm going to put down my background paper and try to get a good bond with each of them. And at this point, I'm going to take them and stick them under some books. Now I'll repeat that process with the middle ground cardboard. Just cover it in glue And then take the foreground cardboard, set that down at the bottom of the piece, and put the middle ground paper up on top. You can see I'm going to do it in the reverse order. Oh, never mind. Okay, put your paper down first and then the cardboard on top. That's what I was going to tell you to do. It makes it a little easier. It's just kind of hard to sneak the paper underneath the cardboard. So if you put the paper down first and then cardboard, it's better. Under the books again. And then for the final step, we're just going to do the foreground same way. This time we just have to glue the paper down. And then we're going to bung it under the books again and let it sit for about 10 minutes under the books each time. Shouldn't take long. And then you should be all finished. When you're lining your paper up, be careful positioning it, and be careful when you're putting it under the books because it can shift a little bit, and that's not going to be great. I got a little shifting on mine, but it's not too bad. So there you have it. You got separate background, middle ground, and foreground, kind of elevated a little bit. It makes it look kind of cool, pop out a little bit. I think it'd be a fun thing to experiment with more in the future. So there you go. Thank you. Hope you enjoyed.